Et bonjour classe de français 3. Aujourd'hui, on va apprendre un nouveau verbe, le conditionnel. On y va? So right here on the screen you are seeing the lyrics to one of my favorite songs from my college days, If I Had $1 Million, by the group The Bare Naked Ladies. Yes, that's their name. The song goes like this. If I had $1 million, if I had $1 million, well, I'd buy you a house, I would buy you a house, etc., etc. Highly recommend you look up this song and listen to it. But the point of the song lyrics here is to show you how to use the conditional tense. The conditional tense is what we know in English as I would, he would, they would do certain things if the conditions were met. You see why it's called le conditionnel? So in English we say, if I had, I would buy, or here's the contraction I'd, which is just the short way of saying I would. In French class, they don't have a separate word that means would. In fact, they take that idea and they put it into the verb conjugation. So instead of having 3 words, I would buy, they will only have 2 words in French, and it would look like this. J'achèterai. J'achèterai means I would buy. The word would doesn't exist. It's embedded in the conjugation. If you look at this conjugation right now, maybe you're seeing something that you've seen before, getting some familiar vibes, because notice it is acheter in the infinitive plus an ending, and it's almost the same as the future tense. Class, this is how you form the conditional tense. You're going to love it because it's so simple. If you know the future tense, you know le conditionnel. If you want to follow along in your textbook, it's on page 207, and there's also a nice recap on page 314. But basically what we're talking about is the future stem plus the imparfait endings. Remember, for the future tense, the stem was usually the infinitive. Parler, finir, vendre minus the E, and then you added the future endings. Well, you do the exact same thing with the conditional, but this time the endings, instead of being that avoir conjugation, AI, AS, and A, now we're using the imparfait endings. Do you remember them? AIS, AIS, AIT, IONS, IEZ, AIENT. If you need a little refresher on those endings, if you want to quiz yourself a little bit more, you can also look on page R4 in the back of your book, because that is where we first learned these imparfait endings. And that's it. That is literally it. You take the infinitive plus the imparfait endings to get the conditionnel. I would speak. He would finish. They would sell their house if they could. Now, of course, we learned with the future tense there are some irregular stems, but they're the same ones for the conditional. So again, if you know the future tense, you know the conditional. For example, the irregular stem for être is ser. In the future, it is que sera, sera. In the conditional, it's going to be serait, or serions, or serait, A-I-E-N-T. The stem for the conditional for avoir is aura. For faire, it's faire. And for aller, it's ir. I said aura, but I should have said aurait, because when we're using the conditional, we're using these imparfait endings. So if you look over here, you see some good examples. I would go, j'irai. We would speak, nous parlerions. You would do, tu ferais. You would have time, vous auriez le temps. He would be, il serait. They would have more money, ils auraient plus d'argent. Now these maybe sound a little bit strange on their own because they are the conditional tense. I would go, you would do, they would have more money if certain conditions were met. So You guessed it, with the conditional, we're going to be using si clauses. It always has to have a si clause because you can't really just say the conditional by itself. You can't just say, I would go. I would go if I had time. He would be happy if he had a dog. We would speak French if we were in France. And when you're listening to that si clause, if, what are you noticing? Are you noticing that for the si clause, we are actually using the imparfait? Move myself over here. Whoa, whoa. Okay. Take a look at these si clauses. Si j'étais riche. Si j'allais en France. Si j'avais une voiture. The si clause with the conditional is in the imparfait. If I was rich. If I went to France. See how it's got that past tense? Because it's all hypothetical. It hasn't happened yet. It isn't currently happening. It's just an idea. If this did happen, then I would do something. For example, si j'étais riche, if I was rich, je serais contente. Although I know in class we said money can't buy happiness. But there you go. Si j'étais riche, je serais contente. If I was rich, I would be happy. You use the conditional tense to complete that sentence. Here's another example. Si j'allais en France. If I went to France, what would you do if you went to France? Moi, si j'allais en France, j'irais à Paris et je parlerai, AIS, français. If I went to France, I would go to Paris and I would speak French. J'irai à Paris et je parlerai français. Can you take a minute now and complete these sentences on your own, the ones that are left? What would you do if you had a car? Some of you already do. But if you did, maybe if you had like a sports car, a fast car, what would you do? And if you met Harry Styles, whole class, what would you do? Some of you wouldn't care. Some of you, it might be a pretty big day. What would you do si tu rencontrais Harry Styles? Finish those sentences, and when you're done, move on to the next part of the video. Are you done? All right, let's go. Here are some more examples of si clauses, and we will do some of these together so that you know how to do them. Si plus the imparfait. So we want the imparfait of pouvoir. Si je pouvais. Si je pouvais, je. Now we want the resulting clause to be in the conditional. So we need the future stem and the imparfait endings. Si je pouvais, je viendrais, AIS, avec toi. If I could, I would come with you. Si Marie allait. Again, we are using the imparfait for the si clause. Si Marie allait en France, she would see, elle verrait ses cousins. If she went to France, she would see her cousins. Here's another si clause, si plus the imparfait. Si tu me donnais. AIS. Si tu me donnais ton adresse, je t'écrirai une lettre. And I hope one thing you're noticing about this is that since we're using the imparfait with the si clause, and since the endings for the conditional are also the imparfait endings, both verbs have the same ending. That makes it kind of convenient. The difference, though, is the stem. Remember, the stem for the conditional is the same as the future stem, whereas the stem for the imparfait is the new form in the present tense. Drop the ONS. Go on back to page R4 if you need to review the imparfait, because we're going to be using it all this week. All right, 2 more to go. Now, number 9 is different because number 9 doesn't start with a C clause, but there is a C clause right over here. So remember, C plus the imparfait, and then the resulting clause is going to be the conditional. So this verb should be conjugated in the conditional. Je ne sortirai pas avec Jean-Claude si j'étais Sylvie. Ooh, can you translate that one? Je ne sortirai pas avec Jean-Claude si j'étais Sylvie. I would not go out with Jean-Claude if I were Sylvie. Oh là là, le thé. Last one. Again, this one has the C clause in the middle. So just make sure your verbs are in the right place. It's C plus the imparfait, and the other verb should be in the conditional. Nous resterions à Jonas à la maison s'il faisait mauvais. We would stay at home if it was bad weather. Oh, I forgot to write mauvais. S'il faisait mauvais. That is how the C clause works with the imparfait. Make sure you get this all filled out, and then move on to the next slide. The next and the last slide actually comes to you from your textbook, so you will want to have your textbook, page 207, look at exercise 12 to find the verbs that fill in the blank here. All of these verbs are going to be in the conditional because we've started you off with the sentence, si on était en vacances. So the premise here is, if we were on vacation, what would we do? What would we not do? Conjugate all of your verbs in the conditional tense. And again, those verbs come from the textbook, page 207. So you do need to consult your text. And that's it for our intro to the conditional. Finish this up, turn it in, and then we will come back to more tomorrow. Thanks so much for being here. And class, let me tell you, if I had $1 million, I would do a lot of things. Au revoir. À la prochaine.